What if one moment could change your entire life? What if someone powerful saw your potential when no one else did? In a world where hard work often goes unnoticed, one struggling guard found himself at a crossroads until Donald Trump stepped in. What happened next left everyone stunned. Was it luck, destiny, or the mark of true leadership? Stay with us, because this story might just change the way you see opportunity forever. Before we begin, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more eye-opening stories. Under the quiet night sky, Jake Thompson stood guard in his dark blue uniform in front of a massive government building. He was a security officer, once a seasoned soldier, carrying the discipline and responsibility of a warrior used to duty. Every night, as powerful figures walked by, he was just a shadow in the background, unnoticed, unrecognized. But then, on one fateful evening, something unexpected happened. Donald Trump appeared. At first, it was just a nod of acknowledgement, but what followed would change Jake's life in ways no one could have predicted. A sudden challenge, a fleeting opportunity, one decision could either pull him out of obscurity or push him deeper into the shadows of insignificance. Jake never thought he would have a night like this. His security shift lasted from 9 p.m. until dawn, patrolling long, cold hallways, hearing his footsteps echo in the empty corridors, and guarding doors that concealed discussions capable of reshaping the nation. Every night he ensured absolute security, but he was just a gatekeeper, an invisible figure among the powerful. Jake had served in the military for 8 years, enduring harsh missions in the Middle East. When he returned home, the world was no longer the same. Soldiers like him, once hailed as heroes, were now just forgotten names, briefly mentioned in speeches but never truly valued. Job opportunities were scarce and no one was willing to give him a role that matched his skills. This security job helped him get by, but it didn't promise a future. Every night, as he watched influential people pass by, he wondered, if my life had taken a different turn, could I have been one of them? But like every other night, he lowered his head and continued his duty. Until that night. At midnight, a convoy of black vehicles slowly pulled into the driveway. Headlights swept across the pavement, reflecting off towering glass windows. Jake didn't need a closer look, he knew exactly who had arrived. This man had been here many times before, but he had never noticed Jake. Donald Trump stepped out of the luxury vehicle. But this time, he didn't just walk past like everyone else. He stopped and looked directly at Jake. Jake stood tall, maintaining his professional posture as the convoy came to a halt. The car door opened, and the Secret Service quickly formed a tight security perimeter. Moments later, Donald Trump emerged, dressed sharply in a black suit, exuding authority. Jake had seen many powerful men, but this time something felt different. As always, Jake remained at his post, ready for yet another uneventful exchange. But as Trump approached the entrance, he suddenly stopped and turned to him. "How's the shift going?" Jake hesitated for a fraction of a second. Countless high-ranking officials had passed by before, but none had ever asked him that. He quickly regained his composure. "All good, sir." Trump gave a small nod but didn't walk away immediately. He studied Jake for a moment, his gaze thoughtful, not the usual fleeting glance of a busy man, but the look of someone who had noticed something others had overlooked. "You served in the military, didn't you?" The question caught Jake off guard. There was no badge or insignia on his uniform to indicate his past. Just his upright stance, squared shoulders, and steady demeanor. Perhaps that was enough for Trump to see it. "Yes, sir. 8 years in the Army." Trump slowly nodded, as if he had already guessed the answer. 8 years is a long time. And now here you are. Something tightened in Jake's chest. The remark wasn't meant as an insult, but saying it out loud, admitting that, after everything, he was just a security guard wasn't easy. "I'm in charge of security for this building, sir." Trump continued observing him. Then he gave a slight smile, not one of condescension, but the kind that suggested he had found something intriguing. "Do you think this place is truly secure?" Jake blinked. Was this a test? A question most people would dodge. "We do our best to ensure security, sir." Trump tilted his head slightly, his eyes sharp. "Doing your best doesn't always mean it's enough. If you had the power to change the security system here, what would you do differently?" Jake remained silent for a moment. It wasn't an easy question. He had noticed weaknesses, vulnerabilities that no one had addressed. But who would listen to an unknown security guard like him? Yet at this moment, the man standing before him wasn't just a powerful figure, he was someone who was actually listening. "There are a few things I think could be improved, sir." Trump nodded slightly, a glint of interest in his eyes. "Good." Jake could hardly believe what he had just heard. Did Trump really mean what he said? Did he actually want to hear his opinion, the thoughts of an ordinary security guard? Before Jake could fully process the moment, Trump had already stepped inside the building, leaving him standing there. A storm of questions racing through his mind. Was that just casual small talk, or was it something more? For the first time in years, Jake felt seen. He wasn't invisible anymore. If this was truly an opportunity, he couldn't afford to let it slip away. Over the next few nights, he stayed late after his shift, quietly studying the building's security systems. He took careful notes on weak points he had observed over time, blind spots in the cameras, vulnerable entry points, checkpoints that weren't as secure as they should be. He also brushed up on the latest security advancements, revisiting the skills he had learned during his military service but never had the chance to apply. 3 weeks passed. Then, one evening, Trump returned to the building. As he walked past, he suddenly stopped. "I told you to prepare some ideas, didn't I?" Jake felt his chest tighten. He took a deep breath. "Yes, sir." "Good. Let's hear them." Jake was ready. He detailed the vulnerabilities he had identified, security gaps that could be exploited, blind spots in surveillance coverage, areas where the existing protocols weren't as effective as they needed to be. He also explained improvements that could strengthen the building's defenses. His voice was steady, every word carefully chosen. He knew he wouldn't get a second chance. Trump listened intently, not interrupting. Behind him, a few Secret Service agents exchanged glances. No one had expected a low-level security guard to present such an insightful analysis. When Jake finished, Trump nodded slowly. "I like the way you think." Before Jake could respond, Trump turned to one of his aides. "Set up a meeting. I want to see what he's capable of." Jake stood frozen. A meeting? What did that mean? He barely had time to process it because that very night something happened, something that would throw him into a situation he never anticipated. At exactly 2 a.m., the building was silent when the alarm system suddenly blared to life. On the monitors, red warning lights flashed a security breach. Unauthorized access. The control room erupted into action. Security personnel rushed to assess the situation. On the screens, a shadowy figure moved through a restricted area. Yet no doors had been forced open. No alarms had been tripped before now. Could be a system glitch, a senior officer muttered. But Jake wasn't convinced. He kept his eyes locked on the screen, a sinking feeling creeping into his gut. He recognized the location where the intruder stood. It was one of the weak points he had flagged in his report. Grabbing his radio, he spoke with urgency. "We have an intruder. I need a team to move toward the southwest corridor now." The other security officers hesitated until a firm voice cut through the room. "Do as he says." Jake turned. Standing in the doorway was Trump, his expression serious, unwavering. No one questioned the order after that. Within seconds, a tactical team moved in. At first, everything appeared normal. Then, one of the agents spotted something unusual, a small device hidden beneath a floor panel. A data interception tool. Someone had been trying to breach the building's security from within. Jake held his breath. If they hadn't caught it in time, the consequences could have been disastrous. Trump slowly turned to him. "See, just doing your best isn't always enough." Jake's heart pounded. He had just proven himself not with theories, but through real action. Trump studied him for a moment longer, then said something that Jake would never forget. "Tomorrow, you're no longer a security guard. I have a new job for you." Jake was speechless. His life had just changed forever. The next morning, he found himself sitting in a small office, staring at an official notice from Trump's team, a temporary assignment as a security advisor. But along with it came a challenge. He had exactly 1 week to submit a full report analyzing the building's security system, every vulnerability, every flaw, and a realistic plan to fix them. Jake didn't know whether to feel honored or overwhelmed. A team of professionals would take a month to complete this kind of assessment, and he was just a security guard, the guy who had stood outside the door. A part of him wanted to quit before he even started. But then he remembered Trump's words, "I have a new job for you." That wasn't a casual remark, it was real. And if he failed, he might never get another chance. So, every night Jake worked late. He studied building schematics, analyzed surveillance coverage, and reviewed old security reports, searching for overlooked flaws. But no matter how much effort he put in, he felt stuck. This wasn't the military where everything followed a strict protocol. This was different, a complex system involving technology, politics, and unpredictable threats. By the 4th night, frustration had set in. Sitting alone in his office, he stared at the documents in front of him, realizing one thing. This wasn't just about proving himself anymore. It was about doing the job right. And if he didn't, no one else would. Jake stared at the messy notes on the table, a wave of doubt washing over him. He had no degree in cybersecurity, no experience as a high-level consultant. What am I even doing here? He wondered. The pressure of the task ahead felt overwhelming, and for the first time in a long while, he questioned his own abilities. Just then, the door swung open. Trump walked in alone, without his security detail, his presence commanding the room instantly. He glanced at the scattered documents on Jake's desk before pulling out a chair and sitting across from him. "How's it coming along?" he asked, his voice calm yet firm. Jake sighed, pushing a few files toward Trump. "I've identified some vulnerabilities, but coming up with a perfect plan. I'm not sure I can pull it off, sir." His voice carried the weight of uncertainty, the fear of failure creeping in. Trump studied him for a moment, then leaned back in his chair with a knowing look. "You know what makes a real leader?" Trump asked, his tone thoughtful. Jake didn't answer, unsure of what to say. Trump continued, "They don't need to know everything. They just need to know how to find the answers." The words lingered in the air, striking a chord deep within Jake. Jake frowned, still not fully understanding. "What do you mean?" he asked, shifting slightly in his seat. Trump leaned forward, his eyes locked on Jake's. "You worked in teams when you were in the military, right? When you were out in the field, did you do everything alone?" A realization hit Jake like a bolt of lightning. He didn't need to have all the answers, he just needed to find the right people to help him. Trump stood up, gave Jake a firm pat on the shoulder, and walked toward the door. "I didn't choose you because you know it all. I chose you because you know how to figure it out. A week is enough if you learn to work smart." That night, Jake stood in front of the massive government building, the cold wind cutting through his uniform. A mix of excitement and apprehension filled his chest as he thought about the security report he had just completed. He had worked tirelessly to identify the weaknesses in the system, but a nagging question remained. Would it be enough? Would Trump actually implement his recommendations? If you find these stories inspiring and they motivate you to take action, please comment 9. If not, comment 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Thank you for your valuable time. 1:47 a.m. The piercing sound of an alarm shattered the night, sending shockwaves through the security control room. Red warning lights flashed, illuminating the tense faces of the night shift personnel. A frantic voice crackled through the radio. "We have an unauthorized breach. West basement sector." Motion sensors just picked up movement. The entire room erupted into chaos as personnel scrambled to check the surveillance feeds. Jake rushed into the control room, his eyes locked on the surveillance monitors. A shadow moved swiftly through a blind spot in the hallway, no forced entry, no broken windows. Yet someone had made it inside. A security officer muttered, "Could be a system glitch. We've had false alarms before." But Jake knew better. He had flagged a security flaw in that exact area, and now it was being exploited. Grabbing the radio, he issued a command. "I need a team to sweep the area now. No one engages until I give the order." Uncertainty flashed across the faces of the staff, but before anyone could question him, a firm voice cut through the tension. "Do as he says." Jake turned around and saw Trump standing at the doorway, his gaze sharp and unwavering. Trump's presence changed everything. The room fell silent, and within moments, a tactical team was deployed. Their footsteps echoed down the hall as they moved toward the basement, weapons ready. Jake followed closely, his hand instinctively resting on his holstered gun, the familiar rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins. It had been a long time since he had felt this kind of pressure. When they arrived at the basement, the emergency lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. There was no immediate sign of an intruder, only the stillness of the empty corridor. A guard checked the doors and shook his head. No signs of forced entry. Everything's still locked. But Jake wasn't convinced. He knelt down, inspecting the floor carefully. A fresh footprint stood out against the thin layer of dust. His instincts screamed that they weren't alone. "Spread out," he ordered. "Check every corner." His voice carried the authority of a man who knew danger when he saw it. Moments later, a voice rang out, "Over here, we found something." Jake rushed over and saw a small device discreetly planted inside an electrical panel near the main server room. His stomach tightened. This wasn't just a break-in, it was a full-scale security breach. Someone had planted this to steal data or worse, take control of the system. A security officer stammered, "How did they even get in undetected?" Jake exhaled sharply, already knowing the answer. They had exploited the exact security flaw he had warned about in his report. If he hadn't caught it in time, the entire system could have been compromised right under their noses. Trump stepped forward, taking the device and inspecting it carefully. Then, he looked up at Jake, his expression unreadable. "Looks like you were right." There was no praise in his tone, just confirmation that this was bigger than either of them had expected. He handed the device to an agent, his eyes narrowing. "I need to know who's behind this. Now." Jake clenched his fists, his determination solidifying. This wasn't just a job anymore. This was a fight. And failure wasn't an option. Jake had once been just another nameless security officer, a former soldier standing outside the gates of power. But through courage, determination, and sharp instincts, he had proven he was meant for something greater. No fancy title, no high-ranking position, just an opportunity. And when that opportunity came, he didn't hesitate to take it. How many people out there are like Jake? Talented, hardworking, but never given a chance. How many dreams have been abandoned simply because no one was willing to listen? Jake's story isn't just about him. It's a reminder that at some point in life, each of us will stand at a crossroads. And if we're brave enough to seize the moment, our lives can change forever. Maybe the next person won't be Jake. Maybe it will be you.